Coming up next, bum bum ba da 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 dun 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 da 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 da. It's the Lord of the Rings.
The last march of the Ents.
The last march of the Ents. We're going into The Two Towers, a very problematic movie, but we'll talk about that over on Sanity at the Movies when we talk about it. And I think by now you can hear our take on Fellowship of the Ring over on Sanity at the Movies, and who should have walked in about halfway through that episode but Brandon Chastain.
Bombadil.
Tom Bombadil. Tom Bombadil himself, Brandon Chastain.
That's right. People don't realize that. I am actually Tom Bombadil.
Yeah, your wife is a river spirit.
Yep, I have. Yeah, she kind of is.
You go into your house and it's kind of timeless. And
Did we mention this factoid that I read about Tom Bombadil, that he was actually just like his son's stuffed animal or something like that he wrote into?
It's like Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah.
Oh, Tolkien's son's stuffed animal.
Yeah.
I was trying to make some kind of in-universe thing.
No.
Is he doing a Milne on us here?
It's just Frodo's stuffed animal.
No, that's awesome, though, if Tom Bombadil...
Like a stuffed gnome or something?
Yeah, stuffed Milne.
Stuffed gnome. Gnome.
No. I have no idea.
He does have a gnomish quality to him.
He does have a gnomish quality. The more you know. I'm giving 2 thumbs up right now.
That's
folks.
amazing,
Yeah.
Nathan. That was great.
That was great.
It was Goldberry great.
This is pure Goldberry?
Yeah, it is in memory of his kid's doll.
In memoriam.
Yeah, it is. That's what it says.
Wow.
He just said that in a letter or something like that?
That is a fun.
Yeah, so they had this Dutch doll, and he wrote poems about it for his kids.
Huh.
And the doll's name was Tom Bombadil. And so in a letter, he says, he's not an important person to the narrative. He represents something I feel important. Though I would not be prepared to analyze the feeling precisely, I wouldn't have left him in if he did not have some kind of function. He wanted there to be an adventure on the way, but yeah, it's basically, so he includes him because he wants this adventure on the way, but also it's just sort of like, it seems cute. Like an Easter egg for his kids.
Yep.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's really sweet. Makes me like the guy even more.
Yep. And like the character even less.
Yeah, the father Christmas letters that he would do for his kids. It's amazing.
Seemed like a great guy.
Seemed like a great guy.
I'd like to watch his wife dance.
Oh, yeah. Who doesn't?
In the woods.
Keep that in there.
I'll cut out who doesn't.
I wasn't saying we like to watch Tolkien's wife dance.
Yeah, no. I know Brandon loves to watch Tolkien's wife dance.
He's there, Nathan.
Now, here's my first question about Two Towers.
Uh-huh.
So let's just get into it, okay? Would you guys say that this book represents a departure from Fellowship of the Ring? Does this book feel like its own thing? Tolkien famously wrote the darn thing as one big thing. So I guess the answer, if you know the history, is no. But does this book feel like it has its own voice or its own identity, or does it just feel like the next chapter after the chapter that came before?
It definitely felt like it had its own flavor because you were in the fields of Rohan for most of the first part of the book.
It also definitely felt like it picked up right where the last book left off.
So a little bit of both.
Yeah. It does start to differentiate because as the Fellowship divides, the stories diverge, and they do have their own feeling. It feels very different to be with the remainder of the Fellowship than it does to be with Sam and Frodo as they go towards Mordor, but it feels very of a piece to me.
I've never quite been able to solve this problem in my own mind of... it feels like something changes to me, and I don't know whether it's the voice, especially by the time we get to Return of the King. It feels very, not archaic, but just grand in a way that you wouldn't expect based on those first chapters in the Shire. And I've never quite been able to decide whether that's just form following function, like when we're talking about more grand stuff, so the style is going to be more elevated, or whether it feels like Tolkien's kind of actually changing his mind. The reason I even thought about this is because you said the thing about Tom Bombadil, and it's like, okay, the first part of this book, before they get to Council of Elrond, you can make a pretty good argument it is him actually feeling some need to write a sequel to The Hobbit. They're having crazy little adventures and stuff like that, but it seems like by the end,
there would be no place for Tom Bombadil.
There'd be no place for Tom Bombadil. Like,
Even
we're telling
universe.
the great myth, the great legend of the ring, and that's what it's all about. And we're willing to even bore you. Like, if there's pageantry that needs to happen with Aragorn's coronation and all that kind of stuff, is going to happen because that's what it's all about. And, the white lady standing upon the tower and da-da-da-da-da. I don't mind it. I'm not trying to make fun of it, although maybe it sounds like I am. But these books get progressively more kingly or something, more serious. Yeah, just more serious. I guess that's.
But then it takes a wild a left turn at the end when you go back to the Shire.
Yeah, I would say. So I just finished book 5 with my kids, and it was almost incongruous. So you have, after the battle, you have him trying to bring back some of this
yes
humor, like this Pippin and Merry humor that just doesn't really feel like it has any place in the book anymore. Everything's so bleak at that point.
We've suddenly gone into Beowulf or something. Like, we're suddenly in the middle of an epic and every's kind of elevated
and then,
a little bit.
Yeah, and then we're in the Houses of Healing, and Aragorn and Pippin are gonna be making light of a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
It just feels weird. Like I had trouble. I've not had trouble being in character and reading at all throughout any of this book until I got to this weird tonal thing that just felt out of place in the Houses of Healing, where it was like, these are still the same delightful, funny hobbits that, and it is funny, Merry wakes up after Aragorn heals him or whatever, and is like, hi, what time is it? Let's have some food,
Which is like something that Bilbo would say in The Hobbit.
Yeah. And it is funny, and the kids get a laugh out of that, but then it tries to take that tone and live there for just a minute, and Aragorn adopts it and starts teasing, and then Aragorn gives some commentary. Like, what happens isn't like Merry or Pippin's like, I'm sorry, it's just the way of hobbits. We are shallow people and make jokes about things and have a hard time talking about serious things. And Aragorn's like, I know, that's why I adopted your jovial tone. It's like, it's just weird.
Yeah. I mean, I guess he mostly pulls it off because, it's not like anybody reads this book and is like, I can't believe the language is suddenly real elevated here. That's not what I thought. Maybe somebody does. I guess the first time I read it as a kid, I did actually kind of stumble over some of that. Like when we meet Éowyn later, well, in the book we're talking about today, and it's like, she was as pale as the fragrant flower upon the dewdrop of the dawn or something.
Wow.
Like, wow, that's a far cry from Hobbiton.
Yeah.
But
except you get some of that weirdness with Goldberry. And
You do.
So it's sprinkled in there. Then you get Rivendell. So there are hints of it. And this is a very transitional book. So there is some of the elevated stuff, but still it's coming through the Ents.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good balance there because they're strange and weird, and
and
yet you're still getting this introduction to the deep world that they belong to, but you still get a lot of the jovial humor of the hobbits, even with the chapter Flotsam and Jetsam, which is pretty much just
hang out.
Yeah, it's just a Pippin and Merry show.
Right.
Just, hey, let's have some fun.
Yeah.
Smoke some Shire weed that we got.
Shire weed, as they call it.
Yeah. Have a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That chapter is very self-consciously like the heroes are about to do their hero thing, and then it's like, hey guys, we're the dumb hobbits. And
it's just part of Tolkien's character that he was, like, as a man, able to. He fought in World War,
right?
And
One,
then I was about to say 2, but it's World War One. And
as an old man, commandeered a tank.
Yeah. It's crazy. We forgot to get into that part of his life.
I'll get you, Sauron!
Tolkien, it's imaginary. No, I'm going to get
you. Always said it wasn't about war. Yeah. It was.
Fun fact, he dropped the atom bomb.
Somebody should make that movie or write that weird meta novel where Tolkien's working as a double agent.
Like that, whatever, rabbit Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
No, so he had that soldier aspect to him. Then he studied Beowulf and the sort of high feudalism, medieval poetry, but still had this love of, he was a hobbit at heart as well.
Yeah.
He loved growing things. He loved the countryside. And so the book was just a reflection of, so he could switch from the woods with Aragorn and Gandalf having become the White and the head of the Wizard Council and all the high language that's in the loftiness of Theoden's Hall, and go back immediately to the hobbits and feel at home in both. So I think it's just a reflection of his wildly diverse interests and how he kind of tried to combine them in this world. And I think he was pretty successful.
He was.
So
I think I agree. I'm trying to decide whether in the moment right now, how I did stumble over at some of it when I was a kid, some of the more elevated stuff.
I'll be interested to see what I think when we get to Return of the King.
Yeah, Return of the King is definitely the one that you feel that tension the most, if you feel it at all.
Yeah.
I guess it's just weird to me that like a lot of times he'll be such a master of understatement. I think like when Boromir dies, it just said Boromir smiled and did not speak again, which is great. Like some of his best lines are really underplayed.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that he's so subtle in those moments when somebody's really dying.
Right.
That you never can. How many times is he going to say, and Frodo closed his eyes and knew no more?
Mm-hmm.
Or Pippin closed his eyes and knew no more? Or whatever. And it's played up like a death scene. But no, he just got knocked unconscious.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a certain... I mean, again, we talked about with our To Kill Mockingbird episodes, you don't want to assume too much about authorial intent, but there's a certain kind of British reserve to him where he doesn't mind like elevating someone riding a horse or something like that, or someone just declaiming something. But when you get to when you get to the scenes where you feel like this should be elevated, he's almost always going to back off a little bit and say like, yeah, well, then the guy died, then the huge dramatic life-changing thing happened that changed everything. I don't know that there's much that we want to say about chapter 1, the departure of Boromir. We kind of already have made the point ad nauseum that we like what the movies did with that. That brings us to the chase, the Riders of Rohan and all that good stuff. They meet those Riders of Rohan.
Yeah.
Aragorn has his 9,000th, I am Aragorn, hear me roar.
It's actually only like his first or second, but
I think it's maybe his third, because he does it with some orcs or some he definitely does it with some bad guys at some point. Maybe in Moria, he pulls out his sword and they're all like, not the sword. Maybe there's one group of people that he has to, there's the dumb moment in the movie where Legolas is like, this is Aragorn, your future king, Boromir. And is there a moment like that in the Council of Elrond
where he kind of stands up and says, I am Aragorn.
I am Aragorn. And he
son of Elisar.
throws open his cloak.
A Numenorian. Yeah. Everybody's like, oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
And suddenly he's like 8 feet tall.
He's 8 feet.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. I never get tired of it. I mean, we've talked in our movie episodes about some of the reasons why we should be sympathetic to the movies wanting to maybe change that, although we aren't sympathetic to the way they changed it. But I never get tired of a character that people don't take seriously suddenly throwing off his cloak and revealing he's got some kind of power.
Except the movie, weirdly enough, is okay doing it with Gandalf in a way that the book doesn't do. Right? I don't think the book had that line, don't take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks.
No, it doesn't. Although I love that line.
Yeah.
We use that line in private conversation all the time when we're telling someone not to underestimate us.
Yeah. But that's completely the movie letting Gandalf say, I am a wizard, I'm Gandalf. But then it doesn't really do it for Aragorn. But Aragorn kind of does that all the time with these books.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
With the riders when they show up and Amer's there. Don't take me for some conjurer of cheap tricks, Amer. I could lop your head off right now if I wanted to with Narsil.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys have any problems with what's the opposite of a rogues gallery? With the heroes gallery of guys like Amer that, like, do you think that somebody like Amer actually should be better defined? Or, like, is that a weakness of Tolkien? Because we are going to run into, between Aramir, Theoden, and Faramir in this book alone,
then there's at least one or two more in Return of the King.
Yeah, and then also in this one there's Hamma.
There's Hamma, and they're all just like really cool dudes. And Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli are all like, the movie makes Gimli like grumpy, and it's not great, but it's something. Really, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas are all kind of just cool dudes too.
Yeah, I basically, outside of our fellowship, when I'm reading them to the kids, I play all of those guys as the same guy.
Yeah.
I play them all straight.
Just,
because they kind of are just the same guy.
Yeah, and it's basically just Aragorn's voice that I use.
Yeah. Because they're just Aragorn wannabes, that's all.
Right.
I think he's trying to show us the deep insecurities of men like that.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Thanks, Peter Jackson, for highlighting that.
Yeah.
Which is why that voice is just me, but projecting to the back of the room.
You read all the lines like this? What do you see with your elf eyes, Legolas? Is that how you read it?
Basically, yeah.
I think that should just be your narrator voice. Boromir closed his eyes and did not speak again. Do you think your kids could handle it if you did? Would they actually enjoy the book if you did that?
No.
In a hole in the ground, there lived a hobbit.
No, they would wonder what's wrong with Dad.
Is Dad having a stroke? So are we settling on it? So you play all the characters. So you acknowledge that they are kind of the same guy, at least even the way you intuitively read it. Is that a problem with Tolkien? Is it just something he's not interested in at all?
I just think it's something he's not interested in. I don't think it's a problem. I don't think it would add to the story.
The only thing that makes it weird to me is that he spends so much time on the scenery. He spends so much time developing his scenery everywhere he goes, but he doesn't spend any time really developing character. And that, to me, is strange. It makes sense to give short shrift and to just keep a rotating. If you're trying to create a sense of bigness, right? The largeness of this army and the goodness of, these fighting men of all these places, and you want more people that you can have die later and have it mean a little bit of something, if not so much to you, but to the characters that you actually do care about. That makes a lot of sense, and you can keep driving the plot forward because you're using them to ornamentation on the plot, to the story, rather than an essential character-driven part of the story. But I guess the place where that argument fails for me is Gandalf's going to go on a ride to Gondor, and we're going to spend 10 pages talking about all the lands that he is passing through on Shadowfax.
No, it's literally being like on a tour with like you're in a bus and Gandalf's going to be like, look over there's that thing.
Exactly.
And Pippin's going to be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And Tolkien's going to write all that in great detail.
Right. Yeah. So
there is
the fact that he's so fascinated with scenery and so little fascinated
with psychology,
with character.
Yeah.
That is definitely the opposite of like me, for example, as a reader. And
it's very much the opposite of me as a reader. I do not, the thing I care absolutely the least about in all of literature is going to be the scenery.
Yeah, we just need there was a castle.
I can supply a lot of castle with my imagination, and you can tell me a lot about that castle through action, which is how I prefer you to give me scenery.
But people reading the books originally,
scenery through action instead of description.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I agree with that 100%. I mean, I guess you could argue, not only did they not have the Lord of the Rings movies, which, I mean, that does, okay, I know what Helm's Deep looks like because I've seen it, but they also didn't have the internet just pull up pictures of castles and stuff, so maybe they really did need more when Tolkien was writing.
Yeah, maybe. But how much of his descriptions are of countrysides?
Yeah, it's just a lot of trees, really.
It's a lot of trees and plains and fields.
The dude loved his trees, as we will talk about.
I don't think what you're saying is that you wish that he had provided more reality by making his characters worse, right?
Right.
I'm thinking, somebody would respond, isn't that just what George R.R. Martin did with the Game of Thrones?
Yeah, we don't need them to be two-dimensional in the sense that, or three-dimensional in the sense that they're just as flawed and terrible as we are.
Yeah.
Which
Let's
is always
just differentiate them a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's give them some, if you can see all of these features that in the differences between these forests, can't you give us a little bit of shading on what makes Éomer different from Faramir?
If you can make every mountain pass seem like a different mountain pass, and every mountain seem like a different mountain,
yeah,
and probably you can
every tree seem like a different tree.
Yeah. Then you can easily give Éomer a little bit of a difference than Faramir.
There are places where he does a whole lot of awesome work and scene setting to me, it's always the places where I appreciate that most are always going to be when we start to transition into either we're going to go down into the mines of Moria or we're going to go out into the dead wastes of Mordor or someplace like that where it's a contrast to what we know and what we already know from our experience. Right. And it's alien and it's foreign and it's saying something it's evil or different or dark or when you get into Lothlorien, that's fine.
Yeah.
Because Lothlorien is alien. But so much time is spent on things that are so familiar to all of us.
Well, one of the best pieces of writing advice I've ever read, I think it's in On Writing by William Zinsser, which is a wonderful book that I recommend to our listeners. If you want to learn how to write, it's it's second only to Strunk and White. He says somewhere, or maybe Strunk and White say this, but I think it's Zinsser. He said, and I'm sure other people have said it too, it's an obvious piece of advice, but the way that he put it has always stuck with me, which is never tell people that the grass was green. You can tell them that the grass was blue or that it was red or that it was yellow. Mm-hmm. But if it's something that we already know, then don't tell us. And that's just that's the problem with every high school descriptive essay. It's going to be like the great brown trees rose into the sky. It's like
into the crystal clear blue sky.
It's like, we know that the tree is brown. You don't have to supply that. Supply anything else.
Dotted with clouds of white.
Whoa, clouds are white.
Whoa,
what?
Wow, you've blown my mind here, man.
I can picture it now.
That's pure poetry right there.
Tolkien's not as bad as all that.
No. And
not trying to equate him with he's a good describer.
Yeah, and if you like to live in that, he's really great at it and vivid, and he is trying to do work with it. It's just work I don't particularly tend to appreciate. He wants you to be so immersed in the beauty of the Shire and the movement out of the Shire that you feel that contrast when you come to Mordor and to other places.
Right.
And all that works and makes sense. It's just that I don't care for it, and I don't actually need that much.
Well, it may be that you also
I don't think I do.
One might need more than one thinks. In other words, it might be doing some it might be affecting your mood and the way that you feel about the story in ways that you don't even think of. All you think is, can we get to the next bit of dialogue?
Right.
Or action.
Yeah.
But I think well, go ahead. Yeah.
I don't mind it as much, but I don't mind being outdoors and nature and stuff. So I kind of like the...
And I hate it.
Right.
Well,
but you don't hate nature like Jake.
You guys despise ever stepping foot outside.
Right. That might be true of me.
We call you Ghost Brandon, but it's because we're the ghosts.
Right.
Yeah.
We've pale white skin.
Well, you can find videos on Instagram of Brandon giving lectures about that's Orion's belt up there.
That's right. Yeah. Maybe that didn't come across correctly. There's an appeal to certain types of people where they like that sort of thing. And I think that he's scratching some people where they itch. C.S. Lewis talks about, and it can be overdone, but he liked to just sit there and imagine canyons and mountains and stuff that he made up in his mind. And I think that there are places in this book where that's overdone, but it's fun to see this countryside, and it's fun to have the grandeur of it described, and he does a good job.
He does do a good job.
When it comes down to it, he does a pretty good job at that. So I think that it's characteristic of his kind of fantasy. And then a lot of the fantasy world building that you would have after him has to do with these people who just want to make up worlds of their own. And so that's part of the fascination of it. And it might not appeal to you. And
I'll say what I've said in other places. If I want poetry, I'll read poetry.
I actually don't mind poetry. I mean, if he's going to elevate things, if he's going to actually just describe Lothlorien and go for it and just try and make it sound like the most beautiful place, some of that stuff's really cool, I think. When he says that
Lothlorien is cool.
He can hear the lost ocean, oceans that haven't been heard since the dawn of history, stuff like that. That really speaks to that thing in me that just loves the Fae and mysterious. But
Lothlorien is cool. Mirkwood in The Hobbit is cool.
I think I think every place has maybe something like that, but then
Fangorn is cool.
There's the other stuff.
Yeah, but it is all the other stuff.
Where it's just bucolic, basically. It's a lot of the Shire stuff. It's here we are on another field full of not magical trees, but
it's like reading trees. It's like reading a James Herriot story.
Yeah. Well,
I like James Herriot just fine.
Well, the thing that I think is I regret maybe in some way that I don't like it as much. I feel like my life is too fast paced to stop for it. Like
No,
if I just had a long
when you
winter
say that,
evening,
I feel that too.
I would love to be able to lose myself in a book like people who love books get to, sometimes when you're a kid over summer break or something, like you just get lost in it and you don't even hear what's going on around. I would love to have that experience. That is not the life that I have at all. And it's kind of sad, but I'm also happy with the life that I have. And I'm happy that I can read Tolkien and kind of get through those parts and enjoy him anyway.
You become a tree-killing orc.
Yeah, I am. Rip them all down. I ripped those pages out of my book.
Okay, so let's give
That is something that people need to know.
give Tolkien all of it. All of the bucolic everything. It's there. It's good. It's purposeful. It's meaningful. Lots of people just love it and enjoy it because lots of people, when they're reading this, are just there to live in Middle Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring a little bit of that elbow grease to character,
Yes.
please.
Yeah.
I'm with you there.
I think
I do miss character development.
I get tired of the next like great guy showing up, the next He-Man kind of character, Éomer in particular. It's like really another but then there are really moving moments. We're going to get to some, I hope today no, we won't. We'll get to them next episode or so with Faramir.
Yeah.
He knows how to hit moments of action and decision in a way that's moving.
Oh, yeah. Well, fact is, manful courage and sacrifice is almost always moving.
Mm-hmm.
And he knows how to hit those beats.
He gets away with a lot of it, I think, because he's a really good dialogue writer, which is something that he maybe doesn't get credit for, but his wry, sort of sarcastic, twee British dialogue that like all his characters kind of, unless they're Gollum or Sam or someone who's really distinct, they all kind of talk the same. They have the same sense of humor, but it helps that it's a good sense of humor. You like to hear the wordplay and the way that, Gandalf's not going to just say, I'm glad that you didn't throw an axe at me. He's going to say, you can be forgiven for wanting to put an incurable dent in my hat, which is a really fun way to say that. And, you don't stop and that's a really good one. They're not all that good, but there's a lot of things like that where it's just like Tolkien would be a fun guy to talk to.
Yeah.
It sounds like he has a very wry sense of humor and he gives it to almost all of his characters. And so it's a little bit like what people accuse Aaron Sorkin of. All the characters kind of just sound the same. And then, some of us like the way that Aaron Sorkin characters sound.
It's kind of fun to watch an Aaron Sorkin show.
Yeah, I do. I think Aaron Sorkin could put some elbow grease in and differentiate these characters. They really are just all,
the same thing.
The same person, basically. But same thing with Tolkien. It helps a lot that
everybody walks down a hall and finishes each other's sentences. And kind of has the same kind of. There's no difference between those characters on West. They are all snarky.
Well, I think in his case,
snarkily walking down a hall and finishing each other's sentences with snarky.
In those cases where people have just one voice, I have a theory that he probably missed his calling of being a personal essayist because he just wants to have one voice speaking the whole time. Just like people who just want to write about landscape and stuff probably miss their calling of being a poet.
You hear that, Tolkien? You missed your calling. That's what Brandon said it.
It's not a traditional novel in the sense that it's going to develop character like we would expect from, but it's not trying to do that. It's an epic. It's fitting into something different.
Well, if you wanted to really make the argument, you could. Who else makes his characters sound the same? Shakespeare. Homer. I mean,
Tolkien is Shakespeare.
Tolkien wouldn't be on this. If Tolkien was guesting on this podcast, he wouldn't be surprised by me saying all his characters kind of talk the same.
He'd probably say, "Yeah, you're right."
He might get a little indignant and say, what about Gollum? What about Sam? What about, a couple of the ones that are supposed to be colorful?
I might just say, what of it?
Yeah. But I think, mostly he'd just be like, yeah, of course they do. They talk like me.
Yeah.
And I really like the way that he talks. And he comes up with nice little sub-conflicts. They don't really add psychology, but they do add drama and humor. Like Gimli being insulted by Éomer, saying something snide about the Lady of Lorien, and then that kind of being a running thing. Mm-hmm. Or Legolas and Gimli ticking off how many guys they've killed. There are fun little things like that add wit and color and humor and interest without necessarily adding any psychological shading.
Yeah.
So,
which allows you to fill it in a lot with your imagination, which is what he wants you to do. You can live in the world a little better and be a part of it in a way that you can't with an author who's very good at depicting character and distinguishing, like an Austen or I'm going to try to avoid saying the author that everybody expects me to say.
The color that you get, even in those types of things, really come down to a couple of things, though. And it's really just sort of like honor, valor, and the joy of battle. Like, the reason why we're
defending super transcendentally awesome babes.
Honor.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's an offense to Gimli's honor that he can't allow somebody to speak against such a great lady. He and Legolas are going to be ticking off how many competing over who has the most kills because
maybe he had a sniper rifle and was doing that.
Actually, there's a little bit of there's joy in a righteous battle to be engaged in a righteous battle, and a healthy sort of masculine. We're not going to be too complicated about feeling bad about killing the bad guy when they're the actual bad guy. Like, it's a good thing that we do, and when we engage in righteous battle, we fight with the Lord on our side, and it's good. And I killed more than you, so
But having that simple morality with one-dimensional characters in a world having
clearly
the world,
black and white.
Yeah, it's something that it obviously appeals to fantasy, sci-fi. So like Star Trek is very much like that.
Right.
Almost every single character is pretty much the same.
Right.
And it has the Federation morality and then interesting worlds. That's pretty much what you see playing out there.
Well, I think it's fair to say I've read a lot more genre fiction than you guys.
Rub it in, mister.
Well, because I'm a dork. I mean, you rub it in. You can rub it in if you want to.
Yeah, you dork.
It always used to frustrate me because I love good dialogue and I love good characters. And I just remember at a certain point realizing, you know what? In so many of these things, good dialogue and good characters would get in the way. Like, we're trying to evoke a world here. If it's sci-fi, like Star Trek, we're trying to evoke a moral conundrum, Are we going to violate the Prime Directive to help these people, but also screw up the timeline, It's like you have complicated, interesting characters that are behaving with the depth of a Tolstoy novel or something. They are going to 100% get in the way of these simple, intriguing situations that genre fiction of any type, whether it's romance novels or horror novels, tends to thrive on.
Those types of genre fiction, they function so much more like fairy tales or parables. Right. And any parable that introduces complexity or moral complexity is going to be an ineffective parable.
Right.
The whole point of the parable is to have contrast.
What if
so that you can draw a clear conclusion and then apply it to your own morally ambiguous gray situation?
Another way of saying it is so many of those stories exist to ask, what if? And if, what if we went to a planet where people could switch genders? What if this? What if that? And if it's like, what if, and then we throw a Dostoevsky character in there, and he's going to violate the what if by doing a bunch of random stuff
that a real person
might do. It's like, that's not why I read this. I read this to be intrigued by the what if and to answer it usually in a moral way. I mean, usually whether it's really horror, romance, anything, these things exist to prop up our notions and to help form our notions of what is right and wrong. A romance novel is about who should belong with who. A horror novel is about what is scary. And those what ifs exist to do that. And you put any kind of psychological depth in there, it can really upset the balance. I love it when somebody can do it. Those tend to be my favorite things when somebody can give us the complete package.
You might say you find it delicious.
I might even say I find, a good example of this actually is you can go to patreon.com/Sanity at the Movies to listen to me and Jake talk ad nauseum every week about Clone Wars. And Clone Wars is some of our favorite Star Wars precisely because it's asking a lot of interesting questions of these genre characters. It's also still pretty simple and pretty genre-y, but we actually like it the best because it is a little bit more complicated and more shades of gray. But you wouldn't have Clone Wars if you didn't start with New Hope and a farm boy that wants to have an adventure. You gotta, with these kinds of things, start simple.
And then get grand.
Well, and it's not like Tolkien can't do a character with shades of gray. He saves it for where it's effective and where it's useful for his big grand what ifs. So it's Gollum. I mean, it's basically Gollum.
Gollum is the shades of gray guy.
Gollum is relatively complex compared to he's still really there's just two Gollums. I don't think that Peter Jackson actually messed that up. That might be a controversial take. I suppose we'll get there soon enough. But well, let's see.
Huh.
I guess we have successfully talked through chapter 2.
Sweet.
The Riders of Rohan. So that brings us to chapter 3, the Uruk-hai. We're going to get the Uruk-hai and then we're going to get Treebeard. Maybe my question should be, was Tolkien an environmentalist?
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, kind of.
I don't know that environmentalist is the right word. Maybe anti-industrialist.
It was definitely,
yeah.
I don't think it really is a question as to whether or not he was anti-industrial. I mean, he wasn't, what's that guy that everybody loves nowadays?
Michael Moore?
No, that poet everybody worships.
Wendell-Berry.
Wendell-Berry, yeah. He wasn't a Wendell-Berry for sure, but he definitely loved trees and he loved nature and he hates
factories and machinery and...
Yeah, I mean, he sees them as gross and...
Dehumanizing.
Which, I mean...
There's reality to that.
There is reality to it. We already touched on how complicated these sorts of issues are in our I brought it up with the To Kill a Mockingbird episodes. Like it or not, factories and meat farms and, things like this can be very troubling.
Mm-hmm.
The way that we do, I work in oil and gas. I've seen the way they put in wells and you realize, they do have to tear things down when you do strip mining. They are tearing down mountains. And there's
a cost to that.
There is a cost to it. And it's a gray area where you have to think through the complexities of having been given creation, both to use and to also
care for and
steward. Yeah. And that's the difficulty of being a steward, is knowing where that line is. So you can't, and I think that's what he sees is what he hates about Saruman is he hates it's not like they never start fires.
Right.
And that every tree,
they know what I mean? Eat meat.
They eat meat. It's not, so he's not an environmentalist in the sense that you should never touch a tree but it's the wastefulness of it.
There's a hierarchy that Tolkien accepts that I think a real kind of Earth Gaia Mother environmentalist of today wouldn't, which is, I mean, even the trees need shepherd. Like the trees need to be told no, actually, weirdly enough in these stories, like the trees can't just be allowed to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they go bad if they're untended. Actually, you need tree shepherds and tree elves, and you need people caring for them. Even in the Shire, the relatively bucolic Shire area, that forest kind of went bad. Although, why did that forest go bad? I guess that forest didn't go bad. That forest did go bad, though. Why didn't
Old Man Willow went bad?
Yeah.
And he had all these little invisible tendrils.
The whole forest is kind of out to get him, isn't it?
A little bit. I think the Old Man Willow was kind of...
Yeah, but it's calling. And shepherding them into a trap.
Yeah.
He does have a little bit of that, the Willows kind of, or any kind of good environmental story where it's like, this is bigger than you, and like you better be careful before you mess with it too much.
Like that sci-fi movie, what was that recent one?
Annihilation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It had that sense about it of every good environmental sci-fi.
Or even just something like The Perfect Storm. Like, you better be careful when you go out fishing because you could just find yourself in the middle of something crazy. And
yeah, you never know when nature's going to bite back.
Yeah. Sometimes nature bites back.
Those trees, their bark is worse than their bite.
Nicely done, Brandon. You guys like Treebeard? You guys Treebeard fans? Is he kind of more... I mean, he's a character that's kind of set up like... And then he went on boringly. Does Tolkien pull off the trick of describing a character who talks long and slowly and not making it boring? Or does he fall into the trap of...
He certainly doesn't play up the boringness as much as Jackson does.
No, Jackson kind of feels like he just doesn't like Treebeard that much.
There wasn't quite as much making fun of the Ents as the movies do.
Mm-hmm.
Which gets back to the fact that I think he likes the Ents and he likes that concept and he likes the trees. And so he doesn't feel as much hatred towards it, even though I'm pretty sure Peter Jackson would be more willing to classify himself as an environmentalist. So.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, I think I've said this before, but it does fascinate me that this book, maybe more than any other book you can name, tends to unite people at the broadest ends of the liberal or conservative spectrum, like your most hippie, dippy.
Yeah, this was
people,
a Flower Child book.
Yeah,
for a long time.
this was a big deal in the 60s. And then it's also like conservative, crusty Christians love it too.
Yeah.
Good job, Tolkien.
You can kill some orcs,
Mm-hmm.
but then you can also save some trees.
Kill an orc, save a tree.
Kill an orc, save a tree.
All right.
I completely forgot that Saruman just showed up and sort of stared at them and then left.
Oh, that was creepy.
Yeah. That's weird, and he doesn't really do anything with it.
No.
Yeah, it is weird.
You're like, why? Why does that even happen? I think the movie just makes it out like that was Gandalf, right?
Yeah, the movie's like, there's a white wizard in the woods. Who can it be?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't try to make it out as though Saruman's also wandering about.
I love the idea of Sauron. It's really creepy.
Yeah.
I don't know why Saruman needs to go for walks, and if he sees these dudes, why doesn't he blast them?
Yeah, it leaves that question just
It
there.
seems like these are some guys that have elected the way of pain.
Yeah. I need to have Saruman in like a wrestler's outfit. You have elected the way of pain.
I gave you the chance of aiding me willingly. That brings up another question, because what you made me think is the whole way that Saruman is structured, where you never meet him until you do, is really weird. And also just the way this book is structured is not what I would intuit. And what do you guys think about Tolkien's decisions to spend so much time with one block of people, to devote an entire book and leave you hanging? And just the way that he structures this book, like if you're reading it for the first time, whether you've seen the movies or not, I think you don't expect it to, like, I can't think of another book that it really does this exactly.
When I first read it,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, when I first read it, I was disappointed. I wanted to have bits of each.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I wanted to especially get back with Frodo and Sam.
You spent a long time away from those guys.
Yeah, it feels
tangential. It feels like this is not the important stuff. You want to be with Frodo and Sam.
Here's what I want to say, and this is going to be taken as blasphemy, and I can't really justify it. It feels lazy.
You're saying it feels
like lazy writing.
Like this was the easy way out.
Yeah, instead of trying to find a way.
he didn't want to get out his flow chart and figure out like this was happening during this. And
Well, I don't think he would have minded getting his flow chart out, but I think doing the work of figuring out how to interweave two different stories as they diverge.
Yeah, I think that's the laziness, because he still, I mean, even in the Frodo Sam period sections, he still has the hints at like, oh, there go the Nazgul, they must be headed towards the tower, stuff like that. So he knows the timeline.
Yeah, right. he knows, and he's going to drop them. He's going to drop in like a thing happens over here that we're going to see happen, or feel the effects of at the right time.
Yeah.
But
he didn't want to do the work that, I said I wasn't going to mention him, but Tolstoy did it very well in both Anna Karenina and War and Peace.
Tolstoy was who I was thinking of actually when I was like,
he managed to weave about 1 million storylines together.
And he'll spend a chunk, but it's not like we're going to tell all of this character's
He benefits from having extraordinarily short chapters too.
He does.
But
yeah,
I mean, you have to remember, I guess, maybe my argument against the laziness would be Tolkien.
I'm not committed to being lazy.
No.
I'm just saying it feels a little, you could say lazy, you could say kind of like a cop out.
If he considered all the options, this was the easy one.
the only reason I'm willing to kind of go that way is because I felt that when I first read it. I felt like, well, this is just non-traditional. This isn't the way that most people would handle it. And I felt kind of frustrated by it. I'm like, I don't want just a whole dose of these guys. By the time I get to Frodo and Sam, I'm burnt out. I don't want to be with Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli this long.
Well, and he actually does swap to the Hobbit. Like, he's not incapable of having interweaving stories, because in this book, it's the Hobbit's story for a little bit. And then, although even there, he often prefers to have some characters meet up and then some characters tell those characters what happened.
Yes, very much.
As opposed to us actually getting to see the Entwash and all that stuff.
Well, yeah, I think book 3 is proof that he could have done it, because you have Aragorn and Gimli on the hunt, and then you have the Uruk-hai chapters, and then you have them going to Rohan, and then Gandalf's there, and that's kind of where all the stories cross paths.
But what we're really going to do is shuffle the hobbits off as quickly as possible and then just hang with Aragorn until Aragorn meets back up with the hobbits, and then the hobbits will be like, a bunch of cool stuff happened.
This is what it was like.
This is what it was like.
Wish you could have seen it.
Wish you could have been there.
He does that over and over again.
Yeah.
We don't get to see what happens when Aragorn and Gandalf and the Riders of Rohan split up in Return of the King. We get to see the beginning of Pippin's journey and spend a little time there. Then we go and see the beginning of the Riders of Rohan. Then we go and see Aragorn lead us through the paths of the dead. And then we just, boom, we go to Gondor and we live in Gondor. And we see the Riders of Rohan coming from the perspective of Gondor.
Yeah.
And then we see Aragorn showing up on the river in the ship with black sails from the perspective of Gondor. And then we get this like, well, this is what happened. You know, these epilogues sort of like, well, now that we're all healed in the houses of whatever, this is, and Aragorn's off in the tent, you know, plotting our mutual destruction.
Right.
Let's tell the story of how we went to...
Man. We're not there yet, but that house is a healing chapter.
Oh,
If I had a chapter that's my least favorite chapter, that's got to be a candidate.
I keep bringing it up because it's bad.
Everything that's in there I like, but man, the placement structurally is so lame.
Well, it's I think is what Jake's saying is that he
Throw it in the appendix, dude.
he can kind of be tone deaf. He can kind of be tone deaf sometimes as to what he shows us in a story,
Right.
and and his perspective can be off sometimes.
I find that, okay, this is going to sound super condescending, but I find it kind of adorable, though, that he's just so happy with boring stuff.
Yeah, like, you guys are gonna love this.
Wait till you get a load of the Houses of Healing.
Have you ever wondered how long it takes to heal from a wraith blade?
A long
Takes
time.
a long time, and lots of stuff can happen.
Hey guys, look, here's this comic character who's a lore master, but he's stupid.
Yeah.
Because he can tell you about all the names for these things, but he thinks that they're worthless. And
Yeah. It'd be like if a Civil War movie decided that the majority of it just needed to be from the medic's tent.
Right.
While the guy's just laying there writhing.
You know, there's this great show called MASH. I don't know if you're...
Oh, well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, that'd be stupid. No one would watch that.
That sounds dumb. I bet you can't make a famous show out of that.
Well, what you wouldn't want to do is promise everybody the most awesome Civil War battle show and then spend a bunch of time.
That's what I'm. Thank you, Nathan. This is why I lose the law episodes, the legal episodes, whatever.
Episode.
Yeah.
I will say
It's because of my ability to have 70s TV shows at my fingertips.
That's right.
That is Jake's great power.
Yeah.
My superpower.
He is going to write the next Stranger Things.
But Brandon, did you think about that girl? The Jeffersons?
What? No, I didn't.
All in the Family much?
Yeah.
I will say, we are so attuned and sophisticated in the way we understand cross-cutting because we understand cinema because of George Lucas and because of D.W. Griffith with Birth of a Nation. Like, Hollywood has perfected the art of creating suspense through cutting between different storylines, and we're so used to it. And suspense writers, you know, your Michael Crichtons, what's the guy that wrote Da Vinci Code, your Dan Browns, people like that, they have perfected the art of, I mean, these guys spend months outlining their books, you know, like a Tom Clancy or something. He's dead now, but somebody like that spends a lot of time thinking about how can I bring this chapter to a fever pitch and then stop and go somewhere else for a chapter, and how can I juggle all that for maximum suspense, because that's what you're reading my book for, and that's what you're paying for in your grocery. We really take all that for granted. I don't think it's something that Tolkien was necessarily probably processing. What he was doing would have been more intuitive. Like, Tolkien would never write the book this way now. We all accept certain rules of suspense storytelling that Tolkien just violates all over the place because they didn't exist. So I guess that's where I'd make some space for him.
Plays?
Shakespeare, same thing, man. I mean, Shakespeare does not satisfy me in the way that he cuts between action and in the action that he shows and doesn't show. Some of it may have been dictated by what he could show on the stage. But I mean, how often in Shakespeare play will some doofus come on and tell you that the most exciting thing just happened? It's like all the time.
I think part of that, if you're thinking of the history plays, that is because it had to be portrayed off.
Right, I understand
stage.
that, and I'm not. But I do want to make some
if
space.
Shakespeare could have given you a bloody battle on stage.
Oh, he would have.
Yep, he would have done that.
I don't know that he would have. I mean, yes. On the one hand, yes, I agree with you 100%.
On
the other hand,
Julius Caesar getting stabbed to death.
yeah, I know. I mean, I'm not arguing with that, but I do want to make some space for the fact that I really do believe 100% what I said. We are living in the 21st century with 100 years of cinema behind us, are so much more sophisticated in what we expect and what we know about how these things work than these guys would have been.
Romeo and Juliet's a good counter to that, because that does have all these, there's like 3 storylines at the end that are all converging on that cemetery right at the end. You have Romeo's, and then you have Juliet's, and then you also have the friar trying to get to them on time. And you have these 3 narratives all coming to this climactic point.
Right. I mean,
so you see some of it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I'm not going to say that you're going to be able to think of a million counter examples to what I'm saying. But
yeah, the general point I think is fair and still stands.
Yeah.
Okay.
We just think cinematically these days.
You're right.
And that's another argument you could make about all the descriptions. Like we're just like, action. Come on, dude.
The place where it does, this strategy does work the best, and I'm sorry to keep jumping ahead to Return of the King, is we have no idea what's happened to Sam and Frodo. And we've gotten all the way through the Battle of Gondor, and now Gandalf's like, well, we can't beat Mordor in battle any way you cut it. We have one hope, and that's that somehow Frodo gets the ring into Mount Doom. And so what we should do is, since our lives are basically forfeit no matter what, unless that happens, is we should march up to the gates of Mordor and throw our lives away as distractions.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that even if we die, we have done everything in our power to increase the possibility that there will be a new age after all of this.
Right.
And they go up, and the mouth of Sauron comes out, and he's got Frodo and Sam's things. And everybody has the despair, and nobody knows what to do. And it feels like Gandalf might just concede. And then Gandalf straightens up and says, screw it, let's all fight and die. That all converges on them, and we switch to Pippin's perspective, and we see the guardsman from Gondor, I forget his name off the top of my head, because he's another one of those...
Just a good guy.
Goody two-shoes.
Boromond or Boragond or Baragond or something like that.
Right.
Baragond, I think it is. We see him die, and then Pippin gets crushed, and he has this sort of like death scene, and it's the end.
He knew no more.
He knew no more. And now it's what happened, how did things stand? And now we're going to go all the way back to where we left Frodo and Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, Tolkien
and
actually...
That's cool.
That works. I mean, he does actually use those tricks of us, like Dan Brown, like, I'm going to plant a question in your mind, and then I'm going to refuse to answer it as long as possible. He just stretches it out longer than we're used to.
Two Towers ends that way.
Yeah, Two Towers. That was the other one I was thinking of.
Bang, clang, the doors, and Frodo was captured alive.
Yeah, and Sam's like, no! And that's a wonderful cliffhanger, and then you got to wait forever to find out.
Talk about a great chapter name, The Choices of Master Samwise.
That is... Tolkien's really good at chapter names.
Yeah.
If we haven't said that already. I'm sure no one wants to argue that point, but Flotsam and Jetsam.
Yeah. Is it the many choices of Master Samwise or just the choices?
I think the choices, but it could be the many choices. I probably have it right here. The Choices of Master Samwise.
Yeah.
Comes right after Shelob's Lair, one of the coolest chapters in all of
it's going to be a fun one to talk about.
Yep. But in order to talk about that, we've got to talk about a lot of other stuff that we haven't even brought Gandalf back to life. I think we're going to have to save that for next time.
We resuscitate him.
Come back to Lord of the Rings, because I do want to talk about that. But right now, the thing that I really want to do is shout out our patrons.
Shout out them patrons.
I can't imagine we won't be able to finish this book off next time, because there's not that much more to talk about. I mean, I know you guys want to go over the...
Oh, there is Gollum.
No, I mean this book 3.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
The Voice of Saruman.
We got to talk about Gandalf. So next time, folks, we're going to talk about Gandalf. We're going to talk about the Voice of Saruman. We're going to talk about...
The Palantir.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Helm's Deep. I don't know what we're going to say besides it was cool, but...
It was deep.
Yep, it was deep, man. It's Helm's Deep. Some orcs got their heads cut off.
Elves did not show up.
But then elves were never on the outs with men, so it didn't hurt that much that they didn't.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, but let's shout out some patrons, guys.
Let's do it.
Shout out some patrons. Jake, why don't you compare each one of these patrons to something from summer, the month of summer. And Brandon, you shout them out.
All right. Oh, like I have the easy job. That's good.
I'll switch it up next time. I'll give Jake the easy job.
No, don't worry about it. I think I can survive.
I know you want more action.
Oh yeah,
you're like an honorable man.
Yeah,
like Aragorn or Boragorn.
Thanks. I like all the subtle insults you're giving to me here, Nathan.
Me too. All right, Robert and excuse me, folks. Yes. Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds.
Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds.
Sand.
Notice how neither Jake or Brandon said "bless you." By the way.
Yeah.
I assumed you would cut it out, so I didn't need to pretend to have
any sympathy
or propriety.
Gesundheit, Nathan.
The Artful Anthony Dodger.
The Artful Anthony Dodger.
Ice cream sandwiches.
Little Anthony Cigar Store.
Little Anthony Cigar Store.
Pools.
Cool. The Immortal Chelsea E.
Immortal Chelsea E. I don't know why that was cool.
It's a cool thing from summer. Come on.
Awesome.
Radical.
Popsicles.
Tubular, man.
Tubular is the phrase that I always use. Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley.
Yeah.
Bicycles.
Brandon, you had one job. Lily of the Valley.
Lily of the Valley.
Basketball with friends.
Andrew and Esther, not anymore. Post-COVID-19. Andrew and Esther, the Lovebirds.
Andrew and Esther, the Lovebirds.
Hot dogs.
The Keith Master.
The Keith Master.
Baseball.
The David's Mighty Men Trucking.
David's Mighty Men Trucking.
Peanuts and Cracker Jacks.
John and Jill and Little Baby Max.
Kind of cheating.
John and Jill and Little Baby Max.
Berry picking.
Okay. It's not summer if I haven't gone berry picking.
No.
I go berry picking every summer.
I have never gone berry picking in my life except for one other kid.
Where do you go berry picking? Up in Michigan?
Yeah.
Yeah, see.
We go on vacation up in Michigan and the blueberry patches are ripe. And
wait, this sounds like you
idyllic.
Do like... Sounds like Jake
Summer
does
vacation.
Like nature.
Yeah, it sounds like he does.
You should probably write some long descriptions of berry picking for Jake.
I will. Jake, hey, people, we should do some sort of challenge where if they do it right, we'll do some berry picking paragraphs for Jake.
Okay. What do people have to do to get berry picking?
We'll both have to write one, Nathan.
Yeah, okay. I'll write a berry picking paragraph for Jake.
Imagining him
like some kind of old timey.
As a bear.
You berry picking.
Isn't there a blueberries with Sal or something? We'll just turn Jake into a bear eating berries or something.
A berry.
Oh. It'll be very good.
that would be.
I think we need artwork. I like the artwork that we got for the last one.
Oh yeah.
I was about to say, it's a silly idea.
Which, by the way, Brandon wrote 2 spider poems for the 2 artists. Those things
Spider and Beaver poems.
Spider and Beaver and Space poems.
Yeah.
They will both be appearing on our Instagram. You can go to there at the Bookening. And also those people should have already gotten an email with those poems.
You're welcome.
And yeah, hope you enjoyed them. One of them was very poignant and the other one was good. But I don't
just
remember
funny
it off the top of my head. Yeah. Fairy Princess of Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Fairy Princess of Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Homemade ice cream.
Did I say Jane Katie were cold and love cheese and also C.S. Lewis, including Till We Have Faces?
You did not. Jane Katie were cold and love cheese and also C.S. Lewis, including Till We Have Faces.
4-wheeler rides.
Constant Prime, Adam.
Constant Prime, Adam.
Fireworks.
So we need artwork of a Lord of the Rings characters going berry picking.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Fletcher, I think, is going to have a leg up on this. Our old friend Fletcher.
That's right.
The Dark Hood or the Woe-Bedraggled Wizard of Yore.
Oh yeah, he will.
We got a nice little
sketch
from him in the mail the other day.
Well, I know you guys all want. Yeah, that sketch was awesome. Thank you, Scott. We love it when people send.
I half wondered, like I had to look at it a second time, be sure it wasn't like part of the stationery. Like
yeah,
it was good.
It was really good. We love it when people send us artwork.
It's fantastic. We love it.
We do.
Keep at it.
And if you send us artwork, you will get a paragraph from me and Brandon describing Jake berry picking. So
maybe a hoverboard.
You know you want it. But we need berry picking Lord of the Rings characters. Jeremy the Dark Hood of the Lord of Death.
Jeremy the Dark Hood of the Lord of Death.
Watermelon.
Nathan, not me.
Nathan, not Nathan.
Campfires.
Maya! Ryan the Red Avenger and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
Ryan the Red Avenger and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
S'mores.
Maya got nothing.
Maya gets a
hamburger.
Sure, grilled hamburger. I was gonna come up with some kind of summery cocktail.
You should.
Do
it.
Mai
Tai.
Mai Tai.
Yeah, Mai Tai.
A Maya tie. This podcast has reached its peak. Ryan the Red Avenger and Judith the
We already
Ladies.
said them. They're s'mores.
Sorry, folks. Sometimes when Brandon distracts everything and we just verge into silliness, I can't keep track. Danny the Dude.
Danny the Dude.
Gin and tonic.
DJ Sammy G.
DJ's Image. Wigga wigga.
Pineapple.
DJ Sammy Gin and Tonic. Benny and Dana Tiberius.
Ben and Dana Tiberius.
Margarita.
My Tiberius. Eric and Catherine from Beyond Window Break.
Eric and Catherine. John Woodward.
It's a picnic.
Your impression of me always sounds like Yogi Bear.
I need a picnic basket.
Professor and Lady X.
Professor and Lady X.
Cold brew coffee.
Yum. Lavender's green, Dylan, Dylan. Lavender's blue. Lavender's green, Dylan, Dylan. I love you too.
Homemade Kool-Aid pops.
No constrictor.
No constrictor.
Freeze pops.
Merchie.
Mercheap.
Volleyball. Backyard volleyball.
Volleyball, outward volleyball. The fair and pregnant. Made in Chloe.
The fair and fragrant Maiden Chloe.
Oh.
I thought it was Golden Knight's life, liberty, and the pursuit of cheese.
Cheese.
Mint julep.
Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey, the Texas Ranger.
Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey, the Texas Ranger. That's right, Texas.
Street vendors.
Mm-hmm. Rachel.
Corn dogs.
Leopard Tank Thomas.
Leopard Tank Thomas.
County fairs.
Yeah.
Midnight Ninja Ellen.
Ninja Ellen.
Ferris wheels.
Queen
He's
Kongetta.
going to say Ferris Bueller. Queen Kongetta.
Lawn chairs.
That movie does not take place during summer, Brandon, because Ferris Bueller's escaping from school.
That's right.
Man, when you got a logical working mind like
And he
mine.
is completely a figment of his friend's imagination.
Oh, is that your theory on that movie?
That's somebody's theory.
I think there's too many theories about a middling film. Yes, folks, that's my take on that. Return of the Jedediah.
Return of the Jedediah.
Bug spray.
Middling might be fair. Unfair.
Fair to middling? Unfair to middling?
Too fair.
Too fair?
Yeah.
It's got a cute beginning when Ferris is taking his shower and talking to the camera. That's what that movie has going for it. That's it. Don't really care about anything else. You want Prime Hughes? Watch The Breakfast Club. Jay of Rack and Ruin.
Dan Rack and Ruin.
Tiki torches.
Is that true? Is that the best John Hughes movie? Breakfast Club?
I don't know.
Maybe.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but that's atypical.
Yeah.
What's
But I'm-
Martin Sheen's son's name?
Charlie Sheen?
No, the other one. Enrico Iglesias or something like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The guy from The Breakfast Club. Emilio Estevez.
Emilio Estevez, yeah.
Nice job, racist. Timothy the Writer at Dawn. Did I say him?
Timothy the Writer at Dawn.
Camping.
The question, is that the best Emilio Estevez movie?
No, that would be the D2.
The Mighty Ducks. Yeah, that's right.
Not D1, D2. Eric and Catherine. Yeah, I said them. Maddie, man.
Hammocks.
Yeah, but wasn't he in also like a Wyatt Earp movie or something?
Young Guns?
Yeah, Young Guns.
Oh, brother. Sweet Jamie Sunshine.
Sweet Jamie Sunshine.
Barbecue festivals.
You're welcome, folks, for Brandon reminding you that Young Guns was a thing.
You ever seen Tombstone?
Yeah, Tombstone's great.
Fantastic.
Young Guns, not so much.
Yeah.
Tyler, the Keeper of Eternal Darkness, and Laura, the Keeper of Eternal
Tyler,
Light.
Keeper of Eternal Darkness, and some Kyla? Twyla?
Laura,
the Keeper of Light.
Eternal Light.
Eternal Light.
Stargazing.
Stargate. Oh, yeah, that's a fun one.
Cool.
Watch those Pleiades.
Watch those Pleiades.
Those shooting stars. They're great.
Cold Steel Cody.
Perseids. They're the ones that are in the summer. Cold Steel Cody.
The Perseids are not in the summer, right?
Fishing.
Are they December?
I don't know. You're the star
One of those
guy.
are in the summer. I'm sorry. I might be getting this wrong. Sorry,
Fishing?
people. Fishing. Yeah.
Host said, bad star fact, 1 star. Jacqueline the Librarian, Barbarian.
Jacqueline, the Librarian Barbarian.
Water slides.
What's the best movie about stars? Is it Apollo 13?
The best movie about stars?
What?
Did I say John Bombadillo, Bomb Diggity, and Captain
John
Tennille's mate?
Bombadilla, Bomb Diggity, and Captain Tennille, his mate.
Slip and slides.
You all love a slip and slide.
Yeah.
Brandon slips. He doesn't really slide, though.
Yeah. I just, what's that old comedy where you just slip on banana pills? Slapstick. I'm slapstick comedy every time I try to step on one.
So I don't know that I've ever actually been on a slipping slide, honestly.
I got stung by a honeybee on a slipping slide once when I was little.
There you go.
Yeah.
And we both just called it a slipping slide, which you just followed me into the darkness there. Jake, I hope you got another one loaded because we got another person.
I've had so many loaded, and then you guys
we're having this conversation outside.
are having this other conversation that is driving them out of my mind.
Okay,
It's so hard to keep things in my head.
You can do it. I have faith.
No, I'm done.
Saxophone. No, you got to give one for Saxophone Alex.
Outdoor concerts.
Outdoor concerts.
Saxophone Alex.
Bookening today, written, produced.
Fireflies.
What are we recording next week, guys?
I don't know.
Let me look it up. Because
Beach balls.
yeah, Jake just
Sandcastles.
keep saying that.
Go on, Jake. You got him. I believe in you.
Boating.
Boating. Sailboating.
Yeah. Sailing.
Yachting.
Yeah.
Canoeing.
Yachting.
Kayaking.
Yeah.
Speedboating.
Jet skiing.
Yeah.
Water tubing. Water skiing.
Ooh, dangerous laughter. Stephen Milhauser.
Agatha Christie books for the Bookening. That was one I had loaded up that I lost.
Not this year, though.
Not this year, but this year's the first year in a couple years.
Is Death on the Nile coming out this year?
Nah, I think it's next year.
Okay.
Plus everything's on hold right now anyway. But we'll do Death on the Nile when it comes. Or we're all about the Christie. She's a
Chris Christie, that is.
Yeah, Chris Christie. I probably gave that more than it deserved, but I liked it.
You're welcome, Nathan.
Thank you, Brandon. All right, folks. We'll be back next time. Go to patreon.com/thebookening to support this show. Thanks and goodbye.